gentlemen, a very warm welcome to all of you to the Blub World Web Talks 270th episode. In the last 269 episodes, we have talked to, interacted with more than 5,000 school leaders on this very platform where they've shared their ideas, opinions, innovation, and what all new are they doing in the education space. In the next 30 to 40 minutes that you're there, you're going to experience the world's only and the world's longest running podcast on education, which is the Blub World Web Talk, where school leaders contribute on a regular basis, where they share what all new are they doing in the education space and what all new is education doing to them. Because the way education works is everyone in the whole process improves, learns, grows, and sometimes even evolutes to a level where you forget yourself. How did you look like in the past? So this is true transformation happening. So before we start today's episode, just let me set some ground rules for everyone so it's easy and comfortable throughout. First and foremost, think of the Blub World Web Talks like a speaking sprint. It's kind of a 100-meter race. It's not a speaking marathon. So the speaking time is limited. The speaking time is typically 3 minutes and you have 30 seconds of a grace time to conclude your session. So if you get muted after 3 minutes, please don't get offended. It's just to keep the activity crisp and entertaining for everyone. Since we all come from the education space, we love to talk, but let's be a little fair to everyone who's listening. Secondly, this is a bilingual platform. We are currently able to process 2 languages, English and Hindi. We would love to process more, but since today is a global episode, we'll try to stick to English as much as possible. We appreciate the fact that language is not the measure of knowledge or wisdom. But the problem is, since we have to exchange it, we have to decide a medium. And the medium for today is English. I hope you enjoyed the next 30 to 40 minutes that you're there for this 270th episode. We are going to talk about something superbly interesting, a phenomenon that we see in our homes, in our classrooms, everywhere, that why are so many teens stressed? Why are they continuously looking as if they are, tied up in something that's going to alter the world or alter the time continuum for some sort? We don't get it. For adults, it becomes a little of an overstatement. For teenagers, it becomes that, you're not sympathetic enough. For a teacher, it becomes a kind of a headache that how do I handle these people? So we'll try to know from the adults, from the teenagers, from teachers, and from school leaders, what do they think? Are teens really stressed? Is it an overstatement? And can school play some sort of a role in fixing it? Now, before I invite the first speaker for today, let me put out some data, an observation that comes from data, so that the episode is a little more interesting for everyone. There are multiple studies done by WHO, UNICEF. I'm basically trying to quote them all together. And what they've said, just as an insight, what I can say before I start the episode, in the history of this world, it's for the first time that this is happening, that most of the teenagers report that their stress does not come from home. It comes from school. That has never been the case in history, but this is something that's happening for the first time in the world, that schools have transformed into stress factories. Now, I might look like a villain to the school leaders here, but don't, feel that way. I'm going to put insights. I have to be on both the sides of the conversation. Since I have to moderate the session, I'm not on any one side, but this is a side where we can start from that. When the school was visualized, we wanted a safe zone, but have we created a stress zone? What's actually going on? Let's try to explore from our amazing guests today that why are so many teens stressed, and can schools do something around it? This is the Blub World Web Talks 270th episode. Let me invite the first speaker for today. A very warm welcome to Ms. Donna Wright, who's an education consultant for the Department of Education, Victoria, Albury, from Australia. Ms. Donna, over to you for the next 3 minutes. Please unmute yourself and a very warm welcome. Before you start, once you see my hand up in the air or Blub World's hand up in the air, that means you have the final 30 seconds to conclude. Thank you so much for listening to me. Over to you.
Hi, everyone. Donna Wright's my name. In Australia, it is no different to the rest of the world. We're looking at about 35% of students saying in that teen bracket, they're stressed or highly stressed. I'm not sure that I would agree it's just about school, because I think it's about society and expectations on young people now. And Of course, I think the difference is social media, which of course we didn't have as much of 10 years ago, and in my lifetime as a student, let's say 30 years ago, no such thing. So we've got these increased pressures on students. They're seeing a whole lot of images around what the perfect life looks like. And so therefore they're comparing themselves around what they don't have rather than what they do have. So I think it's actually about trying to reteach children around how privileged they are, around diversity and how great it is to be a young person growing up, and that we're not all going to be the same. And until we can do this in schools, we're going to have a lot of difficulty with actually helping students understand that being a teenager, trying to find your place in the world, has always been complex. It's just more complex now because the world doesn't turn off. I think what we need to be able to do is actually support parents. So part of our roles in education is supporting parents to slow down, to help their children to slow down, and then help the children to actually find their identity. The other thing that I think that we've lost a lot of in schools, and when we're talking about high stress, I think what we have to think about is exercise as well. I think that in today's society, we talk about how do we get those endorphins working in children and young bodies, and it is actually around exercise. So although I don't have the answer, I think thinking differently about what we do as educationalists is something that we should be doing, because we've got a crisis. It's just then how do we support families to support their teens to develop into well-rounded young people? So thank you.
Thank you, Donna, for that amazing start to the conversation. And yes, social media is one of the villains that, comes into this whole movie that we're going to create in the next 30 minutes. It's going to be there. It's one of the biggest influences. And let's bring in a little more data or context here to make it even more exciting. There's something called the digital anxiety. And there's a kind of a phenomenon that has now, crept into teenagers, which currently is being defined as continuous partial attention. Every single teenager who's there nearly on an average checks around 150 to 200 notifications every single day. They never have undivided attention. They do not put all their effort towards anything that they might be doing. They are multitasking to achieve nothing. You have to understand this. They are not juggling between roles. They're juggling between notifications. So yes, social media is, completely changing how we look at human attention. It thrives on the very fact of, giving you an understanding how imperfect you are. That's why you go back again and again on social media to, feel a little fulfilled. Now, how does a school as an institution that's supposed to bring in wisdom, how does it change the calculation? How does it, change the dynamics? Is something that we'll know from the further guests. Let me invite the next speaker for today. A very warm welcome to Dr. Himani, the principal of Nakno College from Sri Lanka. Ms. Himani, Dr. Himani, over to you for the next 3 minutes. Please unmute yourself and a very warm welcome.
Good afternoon, good Ayubowan for everyone. So we know teenagers are presently living fast-moving and competitive world. Then the parent side, when we consider the parents are so expecting their side, what they expect from the children. Therefore, children are so stressed. In Sri Lanka, we do O levels, A levels for teenagers. So they are the one who facing O level and A level. So parents are expecting 9As, 3As, likewise. So they want each and every child to be the doctor, engineer, specialized in their areas. That is parent expectation of the child, what child can do. Therefore, children are so stressed. As well as when we consider the education system, Sri Lanka, we are its education system are so competitive. So therefore, there are less children are going to attend for the university. That level of competition are there. Therefore, parents are sending students for the extra classes as well after school. So they don't have time to play. They don't have to think and enjoy for their freedom. So therefore, they are so stressed. The second part of that, here the Asian countries, not only the Asian countries, most right now both parents are working. So children doesn't have, especially the teenagers, before they become teenagers, parents are petting them, loving them, and being with them, adapting them. But suddenly, when they become teenagers, they just leave them out of their circle. They just think that they are very big and they can handle themselves. After that, they don't give priority for children because they think that they can manage their studies, they do their work. So, therefore, especially teenagers, they need to be, there should be the close person. I think the best person is the mother because child can communicate everything what he or she think. So that opportunity they doesn't have. They are that is the place where they get stressed a lot because there's no person to talk. As well as after coming back home, parents also get addicted to the social media. So sometimes I usually talk with children, so they say uh, there is no person to talk when my mother and father come back home. They also be in the Facebook and they just go through and they don't keep eye on us. So no one there to talk. So they are also they get stress. Then as well as then children also. I I heard children also they addicted to Facebook, social media, so they want to their put their status.
Thank you so much, Dr. Himani. The first 3 minutes were over, but we'll try to come back to you. What very important points that you pointed out about specifically the Asian society when we look at it, that yes, there's a lot of parental expectation. There's a lot of pressure that comes from that side because this part of the world, education is equated to success. If you're academically amazing, you'll have amazing pockets in the future. Otherwise, you won't. This pressure gives them an education edge. That's for sure that we can see around the world that this education is really helping Asian citizens to outperform everyone across the globe. But at this point, there was a small little comparison that OECD did in 2024 that Japan and South Korea have the highest academic pressure and the highest youth burnout. Finland and Netherlands has the lowest test frequency, lowest student anxiety, and the highest happiness score. But the challenge is, can academic excellence coexist with happiness? If you want to strive for academic excellence, happiness will go for a ride. So, how do you really balance that? Is the question that a school leader has to answer at this point. Let's see what our other speakers have to say about this. Thank you so much, Himani, for bringing this to the whole conversation. To make things a little bit spicy, let me now invite a teenager first and then go back to an adult. So the conversation has a little more of energy that comes in. Let me invite Miss Aditi S, who's a grade 12 student from Einstein Public School from Coimbatore, Tamil Nadu, India. Aditi, over to you. Please unmute yourself and a very warm welcome.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone here. And I'm Aditi from grade 12. And firstly, let me just talk about stress in general, like what we understand from stress. Stress is something that we all commonly face, undeniably, but the thing is, stress makes us feel uncomfortable. And especially teenagers these days, if you go around asking a bunch of teenagers, they're going to be like, oh, I feel so stressed. And we just can't simply deny that feeling. And as a teenager myself, I can account for that. And I think what we should be doing is, instead of focusing on the root of stress, we should be focusing on how to harbor those feelings in a different light. So if you're going to ask a teenager if like why they're stressed, they're probably going to say, oh, it's academic pressure, blah, blah, blah. There's just so many things. But I personally believe that it's not just academic pressure. It could be something that comes from their friends, their family, their cousins, or it could be something that comes from within themselves. So again, I'm going back to the point. The point is, we shouldn't be trying to figure out the root of things, but we should figure out on how we're supposed to harbor these feelings in a better way. That brings us to schools. School is a great platform. It shapes us who we are in the future. And I believe every teenager's life circles around school. And that is why I believe schools can actually uplift students in a different way. For example, instead of just forcing students to oh, why didn't you study that? And just blaming it all on them, we can actually teach them life skills on how to handle rejection, on how to handle pressure, failure, humiliation. We should be focusing on teaching them on how to handle these feelings. You see, teenagers, they seek out ways to vent these feelings, and that accumulates over time as stress. So instead of having them face stress, you must have them face something called eustress, as psychologists would like to say. Eustress is a positive kind of stress that we feel when we face a challenge or when we face some sort of hurdle. And I believe that school is a great place to change distress into eustress. And schools could also offer free counselings to those who are emotionally burdened, or schools could create programs through which parents and students could interact with each other, putting all the differences aside, clearing out all the misunderstandings, and have a healthy relationship. And school is a great place for that. And schools, I believe, should also promote socializing more often, because I feel like the world nowadays is so into social media that everyone just gets their dopamine release from Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, just talking to strangers online. But there's a huge difference when you talk to someone in real life, and I believe schools should offer that.
Thank you so much, Aditi. I think some very important points, that how do you transform distress to eustress? How do you make it meaningful? How do you make it usable? I think what you're really talking about is building the emotional quotient of a student, or EQ. How do you handle an emotion rather than just giving it a tag that this is a stress that comes to me from this route? Rather than letting them define the journey of stress, let's give them a tool or an ability to handle their emotion. And what you ended with is very right, that there's a consistent feeling of emotional loneliness for the current generation, for a very simple reason. We are superbly active on social media, and we are trying to be an animal that has no society around it. As a social animal, we are redefining ourselves as humans. We do not manifest the kind of things that we get from human connection, from talking to each other. Whenever there's a community, we quickly figure out, try to give people tags, and go back to that screen that makes the world look amazing. We have to find ways of getting dopamine from people rather than from screens. This is an actual problem. There could be a lot of data around it that can be shared. I can also share, I think, a couple of things about it. That most importantly, if a school has an ecosystem where peers and teachers, all your students around you and your teachers, if they feel connected to each other, have a little bit of an empathy, it can increase your chances of feeling comfortable by nearly 40 to 50%. Just that peer connection, being able to talk to each other without being judged, this small little empathetic conversation can transform the classroom. Thank you so much, Aditi. Let me invite the next speaker for today. A very warm welcome to Dr. Jake Madden, the Group Head of School for Aoba School Group from Tokyo, Japan. Dr. Jake, over to you for the next 3 minutes. Please unmute yourself, and a very warm welcome.
Thank you very much, and good evening. As said, I'm Jake. I'm the Group Head of Schools in Tokyo, and I'm very pleased for this invitation about this very important conversation. We know very clearly that teen stress is not a phase. It's really a public health issue that affects learning, relationships, and one's life chances. And as I think you've alluded to, there's a lot of statistics around teen stress, with suicide being now, I think, the 4th leading cause for death of people aged 15 to 19. So, we can't really ignore it. So what's driving this particular pressure? I think there are 3 key things. One, I think it's the academics. We talk about standardized testing, high stakes testing, race for grades, that heavy homework, level. It creates that pressure cooker that squeezes, the curiosity right out of learning. And we know that at least 2/3 of 15-year-old kids, they fear about this notion of getting their poor grades, and that only spikes the anxiety and around exam periods. The second thing, which has been mentioned, is about this digital layer, the social media component. I think that it amplifies, the issues right across the countryside, from body images to bullying, all sorts of things. But and we also know that heavy use correlates with that poor mental health for many teens and people. And I think the third thing is that we're still feeling the aftershocks of COVID. I think disrupted routines, that whole grief. I think the gaps in learning, I think that's left many students feeling more anxious and I think probably less confident than they did before. But the picture's not even. I think girls report higher stress, distress than boys. And I think that is something that we must always think about when we're developing things for schools and how we respond accordingly. So the question is, now, what can schools do? I think there are 5 practical moves that schools can do. I think first, we as leaders, we can restore that balance. We can set sensible homework limits. We can, create humane assessment timelines. We can reduce that that make or break exam, that summative assessment type thing. Use a variety of evidence of learning, so students have multiple ways of showing what they know. And I think, we're all, grasping onto that. I think the second thing is about timetabling, that well-being. We're all working hard to teach coping skills, helping students to understand the importance of sleep and creating good digital habits as part of the curriculum. And we need to do this every day, every week, not just once a year during a well-being week as such, but it needs to be something that's there all the time. And we need to help make it visible, for the students. I think the third thing is that we need to be very keen to ensure that every student is known. Every child, and we give every young person, a trusted adult in the school who checks in on them, who notices their changes, who follows up. I believe that belonging is the strongest protective factor that we can build into a school, and we need to help the students feel that they belong to what we're doing. I think the fourth thing is about lifting their voice, inviting the students into the conversations, co-designing different solutions for around the school, whether it be creating homework policies or assessment, practices. I think when students help make the rule, they are more likely to live by them and be engaged by it. And I think the fifth thing is that we need to care for our adults. I think, having calm, well-supported teachers, they create calm and supported classrooms. And if we protect their planning time, we provide access to counselling, we build that collegial support.
Thank you, Dr. J. The 3 minutes are over, but we'll try to come back to you. You had some very important points. We'll try to take them in the open floor at the end. So you're very right when you say, as a school leader, you can transform this picture. If you're able to create a scenario where there is a lot of conversation happening, people are empathetic towards each other. I think the reason why kindness matters was one of the main goals of UNESCO last year was just this. They wanted to introduce empathy as a part of the curriculum in schools across the world. That's what UNESCO has been trying to do. They even tried to do this with us through the World Teen Parliament because their Kindness Matters initiative got aligned with it. At the World Teen Parliament also, what we felt, we currently work with nearly more than 1 million teenagers every year across 35, 40 countries. And what we have realized is a teen in the current age does not look up to people for knowledge or information. It simply looks up to AI for that. The role of a school is to now completely transform. It has to talk of wisdom. That's something that AI cannot do. That's something a Google search or a lookup cannot do. And the problem with education is there is no structured format of inciting wisdom in somebody. We still don't know that. We try we try to experiment, we do a lot of trial and error, but we don't know how to really do that. So a school has to now become that space where you give teens a little bit of an authority, you give them a little bit of space so that they can do their trial and error in front of you. If they feel safe amongst you, if they feel safe in that institution, there could be a chance that you're able to increase their empathy, reduce their stress, give them space where they can transform their own lives and their peers as well. Thank you so much, Dr. Jake. Some very important points that you brought forth to the discussion. Let me invite the next speaker for today. A very warm welcome to Miss Ansimone Nashid, who's a grade 12 student from Plumpton High School, Sydney, Australia. Ansimone, over to you for the next 3 minutes. Please unmute yourself and a very warm welcome. I hope I pronounced your name right.
First and foremost, thank you so much for this opportunity. So now on the topic of why are so many teens stressed? I believe this can be separated into a few key concepts. The first key concept here being academic pressure. Unfortunately, we currently live in a world where the value of a student is determined by their academic success and the marks that they get in their exams. In Australia, this pressure all comes down to the HSC, a test that essentially determines the rest of our lives after graduation. 1 in 3 HSC students report severe exam stress post the HSC. This is all because of internalized standards and impossible expectations that we have of ourselves. So what can schools actually do to manage this key issue? Well, schools can emphasize education regarding well-being and mental health. For example, in a few schools in Australia, we have things called positive psychology classes. In positive psychology classes, we have a focus on not only developing positive study techniques, but as well as managing our education in terms of physical and mental well-being. Now, the next key concept here being what happens post-high school life. There is a lot of uncertainty about what are we going to do with our careers? How are we going to actually manage what it's like to be an adult? Now, this comes down to a lot of roots regarding independence, financial and social independence from our parents, being able to interact with peers at university, and the uncertainty of being able to stay into a degree that we actually like. A lot of teenagers going into university tend to switch degrees a lot, and this has led to a large stem of fear of failure, or fear of being unable to be successful in achieving the jobs that they wish to be. So what can schools actually do to mitigate this key concept? Well, the solution could be more life readiness programs, where schools are able to bring in mentors who are able to talk to students about key issues regarding going into different careers or being unsure about what they want in life. Finally, the last key issue I believe is important is around peer pressure and family dynamics. So when we go into the issue of peer pressure, I believe a few people talked about social media. Now, social media sets up unrealistic expectations for what a student's life should actually look like. And then when it comes down to family pressure, we do have things like cultural expectations, where a student is expected to do extremely well in their exams, and there's very little room for forgiveness when it comes to family dynamics and comparing to other people. The final solution for this being maybe one-on-one interactions with parents and actually having really serious conversations about the best things they can do to help their students. Rather than pushing students down, we should push them up. Finally, if both schools and students can work together simultaneously, they can work together to achieve optimal success for both. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ansimone. I think very important points that you brought forth, and even some of them are superbly critical for the understanding of a school leader as well. That what is it that we're really expecting from them? Why have we, given a teenager a very unrealistic, life-altering space we have put them into, that from your HSC, you're going to take some small little decision that will transform your life forever. Why is it so inorganic? Why is it an event when it is evolution? Let it happen. Give it some time. Give them some space to breathe. You have to perform academically. You have to decide your career. And this small little decision, you have to be accountable for throughout your life. Why is it so stressful? Because we're not giving them enough space. And there's a new concept that has come around this, which is called academic inflation. What we're seeing is we are expecting teenagers to perform more for the same reward. The reward has not changed, but the pressure has changed. We are asking them to run a marathon at the speed of a sprint. Why is that happening? The result that they're going to achieve after this has not changed a lot. It's somewhere near what anyone here might be achieving in their professional lives. We want them to run a marathon like a sprinter. And most importantly, why convert this decision of transitioning from a school to a university into an event? Let's give them some time, some space to relax, chill, decide, because there's a lot already on their plate. Thank you so much, Anne Simone, for bringing our attention to this. Let me invite the next speaker for today. A very warm welcome to Mr. Justin Adams, the former principal for Seri Botani International School from Perak, Malaysia. Mr. Justin, over to you for the next 3 minutes. Please unmute yourself and a very warm welcome.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for the invitation. Some really, really inspiring words, especially from the students. My opinions basically come from my experience, and I want to talk on basically 2 or 3 points. We've all said that social media is obviously one of the highlights in terms of that causing this pressure. There are other, bits and pieces that add to this stress for our students and our children. Obviously, academic pressure has been mentioned, but who's actually responsible to help? This is the first point I want to make is basically that, yes, okay, schools can do something about it. And some of the words that have been spoken already really, really do give me some food for thought, to put into practice in the future. Schools are on the front line. Teachers are in the front line. They see the stress firsthand every day. And often they see the early warning signs. But also, not just teachers and schools, but families has been mentioned as well. Health services, communities, they must also share the load. I think it's some fantastic ideas that have been mentioned in terms of, communication with parents and so on. I know that governments, for instance, as well, have also been putting investment in place and building schemes, early interventions, but some of them are perhaps not quite enough. As we know, the students have to be empowered. They have to, be a part of this themselves. They have to have a role, and we have to sort of teach them in schools. Put this as part of the curriculum or as part of the day-to-day life, the empowerment to actually know how they're feeling, to know the emotional literacy and how to cope. I think secondly, there are barriers in place, but what are those barriers? Obviously, students that are in schools that we teach and we see every day, they do. I think it's 1 in 5 due to some current research have said that they do fear talking to other teachers, talking to counselors. Well, who do they turn to? Schools often lack the training, the support, or teachers do, and the existing services are not quite enough. As I mentioned earlier, some well-being programs are being put in place, which could help. But I think there is definitely a culture of high pressure to do with grades, which is squashing the well-being efforts by schools. But that certainly needs to be a high focus. I think how can we remove these barriers is my third point. But what can actually schools do? They can normalize, as been said already, they can normalize emotions. They can sort of put this into the day-to-day lives of students, teach them that it's okay not to feel okay. What's the difference between that, and possibly, high stakes stress? How to tell what normal pressure is from crisis situations. It's been mentioned already, active routines, lessons, learning, exercise, that's all helpful. Teacher awareness is also another fantastic way. We need to make sure that teachers know exactly what to do, who to refer these students when they see these things happening, when they see the warning signs. I think also students need to be made aware that there are safe pathways, and if there aren't, they need to be put in place, but they need to be so clear so everybody knows exactly where they're going from beginning to end. It's really down to not just 1 or 2 of us, it's down to all of us. And families play a massive role as well in terms of, working with the schools, making sure that they can have a homeschool communication that's helpful for the students.
Thank you so much, Dr. Justin, and some very important points that you brought forth in the discussion. I would like to bring in an insight at this point so that more content can be added around it. There was a global study done by multiple institutions from the field of medicine, from the field of education. They all came together. They did a small little research, and the insight that actually comes out of all that data they created is that currently the teen stress level that we are seeing among teenagers matches those of adults in high pressure professions. It's something that must be taken care of. We understand, I think a very important question Dr. Justin brought in was that at the end of it, who has the onus of taking care of it? The school can be on the front line. The teacher is there on the front line. They're seeing the stress happening. But who's the one who's supposed to take the responsibility of this? Who should we be pointing fingers to? Who's the one who's accountable for this? We cannot ask the school to be accountable for this because schools across the world are superbly regulated by governments and legislation. They don't have a lot of wiggle space. They have to make their students perform. They have to help them in their careers. So are we just adding to their weight, or should we find somebody else who, towards whom we can point the finger? We have to really understand who has the onus of doing it. Because unless we don't get it as a teenager, as a school leader, as a parent, we won't be able to fix it. Because we don't know who's going to fix the leak unless we know the plumber. So let's try to figure that out as well in this discussion. Thank you so much, Mr. Justin. Let me invite the next speaker for today. A very warm welcome to Ms. Menthala Mohammed, who's a grade 12 student from Al Ansar International School from Sharjah, UAE. Over to you. Please unmute yourself, and a very warm welcome.
Thank you so much. Minna, how can I pass the first grade? That's what my 7-year-old sister asked. And at first I laughed. It's the first grade. But then it hit me. She's 7 years old. 7 years old and already stressed about passing. It made me stop and think, is the educational system supposed to feel this way? Because that same pressure she's feeling is just a fraction of what so many teens live with every single day, which proves that the problem isn't with the students. It's with a system that makes even children fear failure before they've even had the chance to love learning. We're pushed to perform, to compete, to be the ideal student, but not everyone learns the same way or at the same pace. And when someone falls behind, they're labeled as lazy, when in reality, they might be the hardest workers in the room. Those students stay up late, studying, trying again and again, but because they don't have the grades to show it, they're dismissed. And that label sticks. And that's what psychologists call a self-fulfilling prophecy. When teachers expect less, students start to believe they are less. Confidence fades, stress builds, and suddenly trying feels absolutely pointless. And it doesn't help that students barely have a say in their own education. Schools can change that. Let students learn at their own pace. Create spaces that feel supportive and not suffocating, because a part of the stress also comes from the environment. Classrooms that feel cold, dull, and far from home. But the truth is, it's not just about grades. Teens today are exposed to more than humans were ever meant to handle at our age. Our ancestors learned slowly, turning experiences into wisdom. We faced everything too early, too young to process it fully, too raw to make sense of it. Every day that weight piles on top of school and stress becomes almost impossible to shake. So can schools fix this? I think they can, but only if they're willing to listen. It starts with seeing students as people and not just numbers. It starts with recognizing efforts, not just results. Because when students feel seen and supported, they don't just perform better, but they feel better. And maybe that's all we've ever wanted. Not an easier education, but just a kinder one. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And yes, you're right that we just wanted a kinder education version of it. We don't want to be, superbly stressed on what we want to achieve and how do we want to achieve it. Humans have been documenting their learnings since, I don't know, nearly 5,000, 6,000 years, since the time we find Vedas and other different scriptures across different parts of the world. And what we think is that whatever we have learned, let's pass it on to the next generation, and it might make their lives better. But that's not the real case. Look around. See the most successful people around you. They're not the ones who know everything about everything. They're ones who are superbly passionate and a little bit dumb towards risk. Look at all the successful people around you. They don't give risk that much weight as a normal average human being does. That's why they're able to take that leap of faith that, okay, let's see what happens. Let me reinvent the wheel. I think that's where we have to understand that what is the purpose of what we are doing? Is it just to transfer that knowledge to the next generation and forget, okay, they'll be able to take care of themselves? Or we really need a transformation? What are we looking at as schools, as education systems, as education ministries, as governments across the world? We're passing a lot of information down. And that information has now become worthless when AI comes in, and by 2027 or 30, when AGI comes in, all the information will typically be worthless. And wisdom, which is the most precious, we have not figured out a way to give it to the next generation. Let's see what more people have to say in this conversation. Let me invite the next speaker for today. A very warm welcome to Dr. Karandeep Singh, who is the Director of Learn Punjab Round Glass Foundation from Punjab, India. Dr. Karandeep, over to you for the next 3 minutes. Please unmute yourself and a very warm welcome.
Thank you. And greetings, everyone. First of all, I want to celebrate and congratulate all the 3 students who have spoken today. I think that is part of the solution. The way all 3 of you have articulated the points are absolutely beautiful. I have a different alternative stance on this. That students are actually not stressed. What I mean by that is teenagers are not stressed. It's what we call a hamburger syndrome. So people who are actually stressed, number one, on top, it's the education system, which starts with the syllabi, with the curriculum, trickles down to the school leader who wants a specific way of results to come out, where hyper paranoia is then passed on to the educator, the facilitator, the teacher. And on the bottom is the parent, which is expecting, more than often unrealistic expectations, because obviously if you're putting a kid in a school, you have expectations, and in the middle is the so-called teenager. So ironically, it's not the teenager who's stressed, it's the projection of stress and paranoia that's coming from educators. It's the paranoia and stress of running the status quo by school leaders. It is a paranoia and stress of education bodies that want the status quo to be maintained and disruption to be minimum, which is actually causing the teenagers to realize that, hang on, this is a lot on my plate. See, what we need to understand is the whole idea of celebrating individuality for our teenagers is left out, because I think one of our students beautifully put out that nobody learns the same way. Number one. Number two, nobody even fails the same way. We don't celebrate failures, because number one thing to put it in context with the way we are working with prompt engineering, the way we are working with AI and AGI coming in, grades are absolutely redundant in the next 5 years by 2030. Any person who's a genuine disruptor, innovator, creator is not someone who necessarily had good grades. We are the same society that celebrates dropouts from Harvard who have been founders like Mark and all the others. And then we are the same society that contradicts our own beliefs by asking our students to get some kind of a percentile. So I think we need to get our facts straight. We need to understand that we need to start celebrating failures, because if we don't fail, we're not trying. Individuality has to be celebrated. In the age of AI, it's not the rote learning system that's going to be successful. On the contrary, teachers have to change their KRAs into becoming mentors, into guides. School leaders have to understand that they need to be in the shoes of the teenagers. Most of them are very detached, in the sense that we don't actually understand what's happening in their SEL, that is their social emotional learning. We do not understand predominantly where the learner is coming from, what's happening at home, what's happening, what kind of other, pressures of validation 24/7. Teenagers are exposed to validation triggers that, okay, social media, and I have to do this, I have to do that. Are we genuinely interested in being a part of their life? If yes, please get into their shoes. Do not label them as being lazy. Do not label them as, in the sense of saying that, okay, it's your fault. It's supposed to be their fault, because cognitively they are in that adolescent age where they're supposed to experiment. You got to celebrate experimentation. Daksh, you got to celebrate failure. And I think we need to understand that education system is going through a paradigm shift now. We are no longer in the system, or we are not in the business of marks. We're in the business of creating individuals. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Karandeep. Whenever there is a system in the world, it hates chaos. It hates disruption. Every system loves the calmness of nobody responding in a negative way. But the problem is, all the most amazing inventions, discoveries, whatever knowledge we pass on to the next generation, any piece of knowledge that's worth learning is because of a disruption. There is no knowledge on the face of this earth that has found its genesis in calmness. All the knowledge has its genesis in disruption. And as a society, we hate disruption. And as a school, we should love disruption. But does the system really allow a school to do that? Is there so much wiggle space for a school leader, for a teacher, to give them the space to experiment and disrupt? We're trying some experimentation at the teen parliament, but I'm not sure how can schools really accommodate that? There's a benefit of being a non-regulated institution as far as a school is in comparison to a school. A school is a very regulated institution across the globe. When we run a multi-nation kind of an education initiative, we get a lot of liberties of having conversations, having time, which is beyond some performance that we have to achieve. That gives us an advantage. Why is that advantage not available to a school? Let's try to figure it out. Let me invite the next speaker for today. A very warm welcome to Dr. Krish Bhatt, who's a senior principal at NPS International School from Singapore. Dr. Krish, over to you for the next 3 minutes. Please unmute yourself and a very warm welcome.
Thank you very much. I heard a lot of speakers have spoken about various things. Now, let me begin with the definition of stress. According to me, it is the situation that requires extra strength and support, STRESS. Now, what are those situations? Who is responsible for creating those situations? Obviously, let me give an anecdote from Singapore scenario. In Singapore, 2 years ago, when the government took off the midterm examinations in the middle school, putting a lot of pressure, the parents contacted the tuition centers to create these examinations for their children so that their children perform to the highest level, at the highest level, come the exam time. So here it is the parental body putting extra pressure, and I would say that the teachers who do these tuitions after school also putting a lot of pressure on the child. So at the end of the day, the child is getting sandwiched. Now, what Karandeep has said, I strongly believe that we have to look at failure as a step to understand the gap and address the gap and help the child to do better, as against branding the child as a failure and mocking or laughing at the child. So we have to have a complete shift on how we look at the failure. What the schools can do, schools definitely can have agencies listening to the children, what they want, what they don't want, and giving them the allowance, the second A, giving also the opportunity for them to see the accountability. What are they accountable for? Then they take the responsibilities. Where we require, we give the support. And school should also celebrate, school could appreciate the other A in here, the marginal gains, the small gains. By appreciating the small and marginal gains, we will only help the child to do better next time. There's a beautiful TED Talk video, I think it's called from somebody from Rhonda Williams or someone, where she talks about a child has scored only 2 on 20. If you see 2 on 20 as the 2 mark, the child has succeeded, and say celebrate the 2 mark, next time the child will score 15 marks or 16 marks, whatever it is. So celebrate those marginal gains, and the child will get that motivation and will not get any stress. And obviously the last one, I'm talking about the accessibility. The child should be given the access to all those resources which will help them to do better in school or at home. So if as a school, we provide an atmosphere, provide an opportunity, provide a system or an environment where there is no failure, the failure is completely looked as a one step towards making progress. Other day I watched that one of the child on KBC, and everybody made a lot of issues about how the child has actually behaved in front of the Amitabh Bachchan, the superstar, to be very specific. Now, what we are trying to look at here is who is responsible. They call a six-pack syndrome. The grandfathers from the father side, grandfather from the mother side, the two parents, these people are putting extra pressure. The child is brilliant, but the child doesn't know how to actually manage that intelligence, and doesn't know probably how to act properly, professionally in front of the the person or the individual who is conducting that. So as schools, as parents, if we come together, because at the end of the day, for us, the well-being of the child is very, very important. If the child feels safe, child feels comfortable, and we are there to make sure that there is no stress at all.
So much, Dr. Krish. And when the ecosystem comes together, there are solutions that can be found out, that can be enforced, that could be put into place. I think that's the reason why we have parliaments in the world. But the problem is we're not able to create a lobby that takes care of people who are not able to fund lobby. We have to understand this, that education, by its design, is a system to only identify the best performing human resource and bring it into the society. A school has to now look at it from a completely new perspective, because school is that defining space that will define how the society will look like 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line. So what you said, if we are able to instill this value that nothing in the world is a failure, it's just a step. If we are able to just give a student this realization, 5 or 10 years down the line, we might have a society that we are currently idealizing. We might have utopia in place. And it's not a big step. We don't need a lot of infra for it. We don't need a big decision for it. What we need is just the leadership taking this call that nothing is a failure. Everything is your learning. And when it feels like failure, think of it like a disruption. Let it happen to you. Don't get worried. You don't need to act on everything negative that's happening around you. Let it happen. Let it sink in. Because if you're able to digest uncertainty and be comfortable with it, that's when success really happens to you. When you don't care if I fail, whatever happens, whatever may come, you're able to take that risk. That's the ability to be dumb when risk comes in. And that ability of being dumb is what makes a lot of people superbly successful in the world. Thank you so much, Dr. Krish. Let me invite the next speaker for today. A very warm welcome to Ms. Mansi Sharma, who's the principal of Ketan World School from Gajraula, Uttar Pradesh, India. Ms. Mansi, over to you for the next 3 minutes. Please unmute yourself and a very warm welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. It was nice listening to each one of you. And yeah, we all agree to this fact that stress is omnipresent. And my thoughts resonates with Dr. Karandeep Singh. He was saying that actually, stress, it percolates from the system, then to the head of the school, and then to the teachers, and then it is how it is passed to the students also. Now, if I talk about the system in India, where we have very, tough exams like IIT and NEET, and whereas the syllabus of CBSE or other board exams is quite dilute. So again, the system has somehow created the pressure which passes on from the teachers to the students. So I'll not discuss it because we know that stress is there in all the countries with all the teenagers, but I will come to the things, that solutions, how we can deal it. And there are two key things that we can utilize or adopt in our system to cope up with this big issue. First is goal planning. So we at Ketan World School plan at a very young age their short-term goals and long-term goals, because it helps the teenagers to find their strength. They chose a field in which they are perfect and they start moving towards that. So at a very young age, I'll suggest to all the leaders present over here and to the students that they should do a goal planning so that it inclines with their vision. Secondly, the stress that you were saying in the very beginning, yeah, I will admit to the fact that 85% of it is around the school, whether it is anxiety to perform well in the academics, whether it is peer pressure, body image issue, or there are interpersonal relationship, it comes from the school. So the most important thing we can do again is time management. Time management workshops should be conducted in a school so that children are well prepared for the exams. They are informed the importance of time for their coming exams. They know how they have to plan. And for this, we also adopt a method which is know your parent, know your child, a key method in which the class teacher gives a personal call to each parent one day. In a week, he or she is supposed to make only 2 calls, and therefore an hour. The teacher discusses with the parents the time, how the child is going to spend the time at home. And then we are going to have, personal timetables made by the class teachers for each and every child. We block certain hours for the child to enjoy also. And academics is also planned in that way. So that is very important. We also fetch out reflection time for the child, so he or she can reflect on like what has happened the whole day. So I believe it is very crucial. Know your parent, know your child, time management, and goal planning at a very young age. Secondly, I'll also suggest that school leaders and the teachers should also look about the lifestyle, how a child spends the entire day. So we have planned fruit breaks and water breaks in our timetable, so that a good diet is provided to the child and they stay away from all these contaminated chemicals which bring some stress somehow. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mansi. What you said was, talking about breaks, talking about creating your goals. I can understand how this would typically help teenagers when you have to teach a lot of teens within a school. But I think the structure is really the enemy of any form of stress that a teenager might have. The relief from that structure of achievement is what might give them more space, but just some thought, and not trying to be on the other side of the argument. What I really want to put forth is something that we now call or have defined like the dopamine drain. Teens typically, when they go to their phones, or when even an adult goes to a phone, they're just looking for a dopamine spike. And what happens after a dopamine spike? You feel drained out. Then you don't want to do something good. And teenagers are now in a cycle of that. They're not addicted to their phone. They're addicted to relief. They go to the phone just so that they can get a little bit of a relief. Okay, life's okay, everything's good. But what that phone does is again spikes up their anxiety. We are not teaching them how to be comfortable with yourself, how to be comfortable alone, how to be comfortable without devices, without people around you. Can you be happy with yourself? I think that would add a little more value to the conversation. I'm not sure, just some food for thought. Let me invite the next speaker for today. A very warm welcome to Mrs. Seema Sharma, the Vice Principal for Rainbow World School from Palampur, Himachal Pradesh, India. Mrs. Seema, over to you for the next 3 minutes. Please unmute yourself, and a very warm welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible? Thank you so much. So I'm very thankful to all the speakers. Very, different views I heard from everyone. I'm thankful to Blub World also for giving me this opportunity to speak here. So I will break up today's topic into two segments. First, I'll be talking about the reasons, the factors that leads to stress in children. And then I'll be talking about how schools plays an important role to release all those things. So first, I'll be talking about the pressure. Now, pressure can be divided into two categories: the academic pressure and the social pressure. Now, who is putting the academic pressure? So what I feel, the three persons are responsible for that thing. One is the parents, next the teachers, and third one is the student himself or herself. So for parents, they have higher expectations from the children. Teachers now working in schools, they have to present here their QPI, API, quality performance index and all that. So they are also under pressure. So they are just passing on that pressure to children only. So about self-pressure, what children are having themselves only, like today's generation don't want to experience failures. So this is the major factor, what I feel like. Today's teens, they don't want to experience failures. Everyone wants everything, and that too on top of everything. So next type of pressure which I'll talk about is the social pressure. Now, social pressure includes, bullying in schools or even in colleges, then ragging in colleges. Then children are, they worry about their looks also, their behavior also. Then the social media trends going on to make reels and all that. They are much into these things. And then thirdly, I'll talk about the family issues. So this is the common thing that if anyone is having any family issues, definitely it is going to affect or give stress to the child. Then there can be financial reasons also for the stress in the life of the student. Then another factor which I feel is the emotional support that is lacking. So we need to provide emotional support to the children. We need to identify, being parents at home, we need to identify if the child is not speaking much, is staying quiet and calm. So we need to identify the situation. In school also, teachers need to identify their the change in their emotions. Then another thing which I feel are the comparisons. At home also, in school also, we are comparing our children with the ones who are good performers. So that comparison also leads to lots of stress for children. Then another thing which I feel is the factor is the time management. Not in today's world, as somebody said also, there are so many things that are expected from children. So we need to tell them how to manage their time, how to balance their studies, how to balance their extracurricular activities, how to balance their social life. That is important. Then another factor can be like they are not taking care of their health. So somebody needs to be there with them to guide them about this thing. Then another factor which I feel is also important, that are the emotional factors. So emotional factors, if I divide into three, like the physical, mental, and social factors. So, physical factors, if anger is seen in the child, sadness is seen in the child, fear is all are causing stress in the children only. So if I'll talk about mental emotions, so they are felt in the mind, but they influence the body of the person. So anxiety, guiltness, and jealous, these are all results of mental, emotions. If they are disbalanced, then social emotions also plays an important role, creating stress in children. Then very important is uncertainty about the future. Nobody is sure that what is going to happen in the future. Fine. So it's not that you're scoring 100%. You don't know, like you are going to get a good job.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Seema. A very detailed, verdict you had, where you talked about all the forms of stress that could be there. How can it be managed? What all a teacher could do? What are the kind of things that are available to a school to put in place so that you can really manage what's happening within the life of a child? How can you support them in turbulent times when you see them? They're not in their most comfortable state. Thank you so much, Mr. Seema. Let me invite the next speaker for today. A very warm welcome to Ms. Shubhangi Tyagi, who's a grade 8 student from RKG Global School from Ghaziabad, UP, India. Shubhangi, over to you for the next 3 minutes. Please unmute yourself and a very warm welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Shubhangi from grade 8 from RKG Global School, Ghaziabad, from India. And today I will be telling about teenage stress. So basically, people nowadays think that being a teenager must be fun and they are like free, they can do anything, they have the best life. But it isn't the truth. The truth is, most of us are struggling silently. We smile from outside, but inside there is a storm. So basically, we have a pressure of studies in which we have to study from day to night, and we just have to focus on school, competitions that are coming, and regular things like the exams or the homeworks we are getting from school. So basically, in this all, we forget one simple thing: to live. We don't get enough sleep, we don't spend enough time with our family, and we hardly get time to just be quiet and breathe. But stress doesn't mean that we are weak, it means we care. We care about our dreams, we care about our family, we care about our future. What we need is just a little balance. We need time to study, we need time to relax, and we need time to understand ourselves. But sometimes the biggest stress doesn't even come from school or social media. It comes from the expectations around us. So basically, the invisible load people give on our shoulders to just carry on. Like, parents want us to be successful, our teachers want us to be disciplined, our friends want us to be happy and funny all the time, but they don't know that deep down we're just trying to understand who we really are. But now the thing is, many teens today feel stressed by schoolwork or homework. They just getting the pressure of school just to be successful one day. They have to handle it all. And school can make it a big difference in it. They can teach students how to manage stress and talk more openly about mental health, how to just manage the mental health and can freely talk about it. And school can also help us keeping the workload balanced and giving students short breaks or to relax time to relax and recharge again, to be free and be happy. Don't be stressed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shubhangi. We've heard all the speakers for today, the teenagers. So today's session basically took us to a different kind of a ride. In the last 40, 50 minutes that we are here talking about, are the teenagers stress? Is it a stress projection that is coming from the legislative levels to the school leader, to the student? What exactly is going around? What's happening? Is it social media? Is it your peers? Is it the school leadership? Is it the policy? What is it that is causing the stress? Or is there any stress at all? Do we really want to accept that this is a challenge? We don't want to accept this is a challenge. What is it that's going on? What's the phenomenon? How do we define it? How do we find a solution to it? The purpose of the Blub and Web Talk since its initiation has been to talk about things that schools are not talking about. Talk about things that teens might have in their mind that want to bring forth. What we could understand was, in some way what Shubhangi really said. We all want a lot of time and we don't have a lot of time. We have shrunk our lives. Our average screen time is 4 to 6 hours every single day. We still have 24 hours. Our earlier generations also had nearly 24 hours. Our future generation also will have 24 hours. The point is, where are we really putting it? Stress only comes in when you're not able to do something that really wanted to do. There's a small little phenomenon that's happening right now in everyone's brain, and it keeps happening all the time for a simple reason, because a lot of corporations make a lot of money out of that emotion that's there in your head. The emotion of achieving perfection. We are continuously bombarded with images, with ideas that want all of us to be there on the Forbes list. We only feel that our lives will be meaningful if we are able to reach the zenith of success. But that's not really the case. The simple phenomena of perfectionism, the obsession with flawlessness. Why do we want this? Why cannot we embrace a little bit of disruption, a lot of chaos? And why can't we let life be life itself than giving it a structure? What we have achieved is we have raised a generation that would rather be perfect than be happy. Do we really want this to come out of all the education that we are doing from all the OECDs, UNESCO's, UNICEF's, WHO's of the world? Why are there so big magnanimous structures only striving for something that's not organic, that's not human? Perfection or success is not human, it's inorganic. Organic is when you get up, you're laid back, relaxed, and you're enjoying your life in whichever strata of life you are. It's just a celebration of being. Thank you so much, everyone, for being a part of the Blub and Web Talk. This was the 270th episode. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, and if you want to attend the future sessions, open your audio, say a big yes, and it was lovely interacting with all of you. I hope these ideas help some school, some team, or someone around the world. Thank you so much, everyone. Have an amazing day, evening ahead of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you very much.